Too many people confuse revenue with profit.
How do you get your accounting and financial systems to grow with you? So hello friends, welcome once again to another episode of the Do It For Yourself podcast with Steve Taylor. I'm the founder and lead advisor over here at Merited Wealth. And really, if you've not been here before, welcome. And this is if this is your seventh, eighth, ninth, tenth, whatever it might be, we hope you're finding these conversations helpful, right? And so today's conversation, it's really interesting because it's something I'm going through in my business, right? And I always enjoy having these guests on when it's something that I'm struggling with and going through it. And so, let me give a quick, introduction. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can go into, tell everybody about this topic that we're talking about. As you grow, how do you get your accounting and financial systems to grow with you?
Well, I appreciate you having me on. And like you said, I'm Matt Tatum, the CEO and founder of Decimal. We help small to mid-sized businesses with their accounting and tax. But for me, I always joke, I started out my career, I'm a recovering attorney and multiple time entrepreneur. And like you and many of your listeners, I had a lot of troubles with my bookkeeping, accounting and tax help. And so I think like any good serial entrepreneur, I decided to start a business with my co-founder Jacob to solve that problem. And that's kind of how we got here today. We started about 5.5 years ago and have since grown to, I think a little over 100 employees and 1,000 clients. So it turns out a lot of people have this problem too.
Yeah, that's awesome. So two recovering attorneys talking about scaling their business and their system. So this should be great. So Matt, let's kind of start. I have, when we go through this and this need and this niche that you kind of decided to solve the need for, is when a lot of these small businesses, a lot of these people, whether they purposely, decide to become entrepreneurs or however this went, they're really thinking about, hey, what's my product? What am I trying to sell? What am I trying to build? And if they are so lucky to be successful quickly, right, we really start to have accounting problems and issues. So I guess first and foremost there, when you come across someone and, or maybe when you were starting out the business, and you were seeing these issues, what were kind of some of the common recurring things you were seeing as these small businesses were getting bigger, and what were the challenges that they were having that you thought, hey, there could be a better way?
Well, let's start with the fact that everybody hates this area of their business, and that's totally okay. And I think that I always joke, there are three areas of the business everybody hates: HR, IT, and accounting. They're the three things that you feel like you're moving backwards. If you get really successful, legal becomes a close fourth. But those are just the parts of your business. It's like you said, people get into this to sell what they want to sell, whether it's a product or a service, and then to help their customers or clients. And you don't think about the fact that you need to build things to make your life easier. And when you don't like doing it, you spend less time thinking about it. And so that's what happens in accounting. And one of the reasons we also started Decimal is because this is just something everybody has to do. I don't care how successful you are. If you want to have any little bit of continuing success, you've got to pay your bills. You've got to get paid, and you've got to track it all, because at the very least, you have to pay your taxes. And so this is just something that you have to get done. Where I find that people have a lot of problems is they think about just the bookkeeping rather than the operational side of their business that gets it done. So what I mean by that is QuickBooks is a ledger. Everybody knows QuickBooks. They do a ton of commercials. They own about 85% of the market share. It is a ledger, but it's the end point of everything that you do. You have to figure out, how am I going to get paid? If I'm going to get paid, how am I going to do that in a way that's easy for me? If you're going to let somebody write you a check, mail it to you, that's really hard. You should put a better system and process in place to get paid either automatically, hopefully on like a monthly retainer basis. That's what we do at Decimal, is you pay us a fixed monthly fee. It means that it just auto draws out of your account, very similar to an Amazon or a Netflix fee. And it simplifies my ability to make money, because I don't have to think about, do I need to bill my clients? And they don't have to think about, do they have to pay me? We all know that that's just going to happen. And that's become a lot more prevalent. So You get the making money part, which people really struggle with. And I'm always surprised at how many really successful businesses don't figure out how to make money well. They have a ton of outstanding AR and they struggle with collections, or they assume people are going to pay them. And the reality is people get busy too, and they're not thinking about you. And so putting in really good revenue processes is step one. Step two is figuring out how to also pay your bills and pay your people. And once again, we get to putting the right tools and systems in place. Ideally, you want to find things that integrate together. So we use Gusto a lot for payroll, or Rippling, because they integrate directly into QuickBooks. They're also really easy for employees to use. So you want to think about what are the tools that are easiest for people to use, because where I see the biggest problem when people think about tools, first step, people rarely think about tools. So you just kind of go and get into it. Second step is when they do think about tools, they think about cost as price only. And the reality is cost is time plus price. If you pick the cheapest tool and it takes you a ton of time, it's much more worth it to pick a slightly more expensive tool that takes way less time, because your time is actually your most valuable resource. And too many people think of cost only as price. Does that all make sense? It's a lot to unpack.
Absolutely. And I love what you're talking about, right? A lot of people, when they start thinking about this, they think, oh, I need some bookkeeping services, right? That's what I get from most people when they're really trying to get their house in order. Oh, I just want bookkeeping. But it's so much more than that, right? I see so many clients or new clients or people, business owners, I say, like, what are we here in May, end of May, early June? And they say, hey, how are you doing this year? And they're like, well, I don't know. I mean, what do you mean you don't know, right? They don't know their numbers. They're not taking that bookkeeping, looking at their revenue, and then applying it to a format to kind of really try to predict, hey, what's working and what's not working. So for these people that are those business owners, right, that they don't know how they're doing, at the end of the year, they give to their accountant just like a pile of bills, right? We know them. They're all there, and they're doing that. How do you help, and how do you get them, whether that's mindset, to start thinking about, hey, you guys need to do this in a different way. You need to understand your numbers. That's my biggest frustration with so many people. They don't understand their numbers. How do you get them to see the importance of this, to understand that, yeah, it's not only accounting for it, but it's understanding your numbers so that you can make good decisions?
So I think the biggest problem is that even if you give people their numbers, if they don't understand them, then it's a problem. And so, number one, unpacking one of the things that you said at the very beginning, you need to figure out how to operate your business in a way that makes it easy to do all these things. Because if you're handing your tax accountant a book of things, number one, they're going to tell you what to pay on your taxes and what your tax bill is. They are not the right person to tell you how healthy is my business. That's not their actual skill set. For instance, just aren't good at the operational side. So you have the biggest thing. You need to think through as a business owner, how am I making money? Top line revenue is one of those, like, it looks cool. It's a sexy thing to think about. But if you're making $10 million and profiting 500K, you would much rather make $3 million and profit 1.5. So figuring out what is actually making you money is really important. And that's where finding a good advisor that can lead you through, like, hey, just so you know, you're making $10 million off of this single thing, but you're actually losing money on it. I think you should either reconsider how you do it and make it, or you should think about maybe cutting it. And that can be a prideful thing to think about, but so many business owners misconstrue revenue and profit. And I think that that's a tough thing, that finding the right advisor to lead you through and help you understand that is really crucial.
Yeah, it's that reminds me of my first law partner that I had. He was a big kind of one of those people, like, oh, you got to go out there and spend and shine, right, to bring clients in. So we had all this money going on our firm, American Express, and all the legends, like, oh, but it's okay because we're bringing in a lot of money. And I'm like, to this guy, that's not the measure of our success. It's not what we bring in, it's what we take home, right? And so, nevertheless, that wasn't a long-lived partnership there. So, as you're going through it, and you're kind of getting this through to people, I think what happens is these business owners is that maybe they were a little bit more on top of it, right, when they were starting, but as they get bigger, right? There's more things coming in, there's more expenses, there's more kind of square, more goes into like deciding what's a good decision for us and what's not a good decision for us. So, as you talk about these scaling entrepreneurs to get there, and how do we get this? Like you say, this is not something we like doing or we want to do, right? How do we get, whether it's the proper tool, the proper advisor to help us with that? Because we don't want to do it. And if we don't want to do it, we're not going to do it well, right? So how do we get the right systems and people in place?
Well, I mean, number one, very few people start a business because they love doing bookkeeping. So put yourself and all of us in that category of we just don't like doing this. And we're also, most of us, not qualified to do it well.
Mm.
Figuring out the people, finding the right advisor is really important because you're right. When you first start your business, I have a CEO coach, and one of the things that he's really worked with me on is the bigger your business gets, the more margin for error your gut has. When you're really small, you've got a gut feel for everything happening in the company. But the bigger it gets, the more employees, the more revenue, the more your gut feel just starts becoming further away from the truth, or it has the possibility of doing that. And that's a hard thing for an entrepreneur to really consider is like, I know my business. I know everything that's going on. Heck, now I have 100 employees and 1,000 clients. The reality is I'm way past the point where I have no idea what's going on, period. So I have to start to figure out how am I going to measure that. Finding the right advisor is about finding somebody that understands not only your business, but your pain. What I find a lot of people sell to is here are my solutions. Here's what I can give you. Here's the shiny thing that I can provide. That's great. Maybe they can do that. But the reality is, if they don't deeply understand your pain and why you're struggling with these things, they're going to be a tough continuing partner for you. And so really when you start to figure out, I'm going to find somebody to help me, if they're selling you on what they can do, the output of what they can function as, that's okay. But you really want to find people that truly dig down deep and help you understand your pain. Okay, let's unpack one example here. I know an entrepreneur that came to us and he and his wife were cutting checks. They really loved I want to sit down every Thursday. I want to see what's going out of my business. I'm going to sign the invoice and the check and it's going to go out. That was a kind of comfort zone for them. What we did was we still gave them their Thursday sit down, but it's now click a button.
Mhm.
And it's like, hey, let's figure out what is your pain. Your pain is this AP because you know when you're cutting checks, but you have no idea when they're depositing them, when they're going out, half the time when they're actually due. You're really struggling with your bookkeeping side, so you're a month and a half to 2 months late on understanding your reports. So let's give you what you need, your Thursday sit down to approve my bills and physically feel that I'm doing it. But let's make sure you can have updated numbers by the day. And I think that's a really important thing. The other thing is finding a partner that's in your business every day versus somebody that's in there at the end of every month. If you can find somebody like Decimal who is doing your bookkeeping, paying your bills every day, there are plenty out there that do that. But that I think is a really important thing because you go to work every day. You deserve a partner who does too.
That's interesting, Matt. I really like what you say about the larger you get, the less you can rely on your gut. I think a lot of us, when we're all starting out, we're all really small. You have a touch on, a feel of everything. You have a feel of all your clients. You understand what's going on. But yeah, I mean, we all feel it, right? As you get bigger, you don't see it all, right? So you don't have that sense of it. So as, a small business owner that has started out just like, that husband and wife, right? And, just the two of them. And now as they're getting bigger and as you're going through that pain, and to your point, you can't trust your gut. How do you decide what are the items that really you should have someone help you with or what you should keep? For example, like I think like my numbers, my books, right? I go through them. Yeah, I want some of my team to look at them, but I don't really want them all to look at them, but I do want more partnership in there to go throughout that, right? Whether my books and then in my business, we have operations and different stuff. What do you see and what do you advise those people that, okay, should I give away all the responsibility of my books so I can, help to go in to help where I focus on? I mean, where do they start doing this? Where do they start executing this and right-sizing this process?
So, number one, the first thing that I would always get rid of is the bookkeeping side of things. There's a difference between bookkeeping and month-end reporting and forecasting forwards. Those are
Okay.
three distinct aspects. The bookkeeping is hey, I have bank transactions that hit, credit card transactions that hit. I need to code that to a ledger. That's bookkeeping. Entrepreneurs should do that as little and as short as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of ways to automate a lot of that with the right tools. But number one, you shouldn't do that aspect. Month-end reporting, coming up with, what does my P&L, my balance sheet look like on a monthly basis? I would also say that's something that you should not spend a lot of time doing. Forecasting and the forward looking is where you should focus your time. Really looking at the custom report of understanding your business KPIs. What are the things that make your business actually tick? How do I predict for the future? And how do I prepare myself to be more profitable in the future? That's the area where I think a lot of entrepreneurs should focus a lot more time. You can also find specific fractional CFO advisors if you struggle in that area to do that, or to come up with and help you figure out what your true KPIs are. The other thing, when you outside of the bookkeeping, then you look at what are the things that take up the most time from the people that could be doing more valuable things. So if you're that entrepreneur that wants to sit down on Thursdays and sign checks, that was taking hours of his time and his wife's time. That was taking hours of their internal controller's time every single week. That is hours that you get back. It can also be like if you're using a bad payroll system and it's taking you hours every 2 weeks or every month to run payroll, that's a struggle. That is something that you can think of. How do I get that time back? This is where you start to measure cost as a time mechanism, not just a price in dollars. And so that's where you start to really figure out is how do I give my team and myself back time? And what are the painful things? Also, the other thing to look at is where the error is coming from. When I really do figure out what's going on, where did the most mistakes come from? Because whatever is taking the most time and causing the most mistakes, that's where finding somebody that is better at doing it is a good idea. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like that to go in there. So let me ask you, practical, right? You're in it, right? You said QuickBooks is good at giving us reports, right? A lot of it comes down. It puts it into my ledgers. It automates it. It gives me my month end, and I see month. I can kind of compare months back and forth there to see what's happening, right? And then I have other things, right? You have other things that require this different accounting, and you're trying to determine, you're spending the time on your own of doing it and say, where's the really value of this versus this concept? I like what you said about the fractional CFO because I've heard people talk about that. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
if I go and I get a fractional CFO, what exactly are they going to come in and do for me that now I no longer have to do? And what will they do in concert with a decimal or something like that? Kind of, if you're stuck in it, right? Like I tend to find myself stuck in it times to times. What specifically on a day-to-day basis are they going to be doing so that I don't have to do those anymore? Because sometimes I think back and I'm like, I feel that I need to do these or else I'm losing my pulse of the business.
Yeah, so this is where really breaking up the past looking and forward looking is a big thing. Decimal and kind of the accounting operations, bookkeeping side helps you with the day to day. Is my business operating? Am I getting paid? Am I paying my bills and my people? And then do I get that final month end report, that P&L, that balance sheet, maybe some custom reporting? So decimal is the thing that keeps the gears going. Fractional CFO and finding a good fractional CFO that understands you and your business and your industry is really, really important. Because what they can do is they can take the work that a decimal does and they can say, all right, here are the 3 or 4 things that are really important about your business. And we're going to put together a month-end report that comes out that shows you, hey, you're green in these two areas, but you're red in these two, and you ought to look at this one. And it really helps you to understand the important levers of your business and how to look back and measure them compared to past years, past months, and other companies and kind of the industry norm. And so really being able to look at your business, because what you want to know is like, is my business healthy? But then you want to know, like, are the operations healthy? Is product A healthy? Is product B healthy? Is sales healthy? Like, you want to really double that out and figure out how to understand and break down your business. I call it double clicking. You want to be able to double click into the areas of your company. The other thing that a fractional CFO can do is say, here's what your options are. You want to grow 30% next year. Great. Here's what you need to do that. Here's what it's going to cost you. Here's where you have to maybe outlay costs ahead of time. Here's where you can outlay costs as you grow. Those are really important things because you can say, you know what, this year I really don't want to have to pay an extra 300 grand to grow 500 grand. I want to do that next year. Or maybe I want to see if I can just make it linear growth. And that's the type of conversation a fractional CFO can have is, what do you want the next year to look like? Maybe you want to sell your business and you want to get an understanding of, hey, what is my business valued at? I've built this asset. I think it's worth X, Y, and Z. What do you think it's worth? And that can be a really helpful thing. Or, gosh, I'm only making 150 grand, but my business is doing 5 million. How do I make 400 grand? Fractional CFO can come in and say, hey, here are the things that you need to do to go from 150 take home to 400. So
And
these
where do
are,
you, those are great, Matt. And where do you see what's the level when, like decimals outsource, right? Fractional CFOs outsource, right? When does it make sense to bring some kind of executive leadership like that to insource, right? To insource items like that. I mean, because that's one of the things, I think about, right? And I see these different clients and the different businesses, the fractional, they say, like you said, decimal could be in there, you're doing your books every day. I see that. I understand that. But the fractional CFO might not be there every day, right? And you did point out that it needs to be someone familiar with the industry, right? And then they'll come to learn your business. I mean, kind of where do you see or these these businesses, whether to go, and maybe it's never, whether to go versus outsources versus insourcing and making a big hire for that understanding of where they want to be.
this is where I find a lot of businesses actually struggle in a big way is I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My grandpa was an entrepreneur, my dad was an entrepreneur, aunts and uncles, cousins, like everybody in my family, we get together and we talk about starting businesses. Where I find a lot of people really struggle is it used to be hey, I'm going to grow to a certain point where I can hire a bookkeeper. And then I'm going to grow to a certain point where I can hire a controller. And then I'm going to grow to a certain point where I can hire a CFO. The problem is nowadays that's a ton of cost. That's 400 grand in cost to your business that you can replace with under 100 grand. So the replacement value is much, much greater than it ever used to be. Where I find that a lot of people should continue to outsource is on the lower level tasks, like a decimal, somebody doing your bookkeeping and your controllership work, really figuring out how do I get my P&L, basically the basic reporting, and then paying my bills, getting paid, and tracking it all. Those are the things that you can basically outsource. We do this for almost, I think, $90 million in revenue is our biggest client. Like, we're able to do this for
Mm.
really big clients. What they do is they start leveling on top of us. They'll hire a CFO. Hiring a CFO is a really expensive thing. That person, if you're going to find a truly good, like actual CFO, and by the way, that's the other struggle is people hire a controller thinking they're a CFO. The reality is a CFO is somebody that is going to help you look forward and grow. So if that is your goal is growth, maybe it's M&A, maybe it's just rapid growth, it's change. Those are the types of things that hiring a CFO that can be in there on a daily basis can be really, really important. If your problems are in I'm struggling with the paying my bills, I'm struggling with AR or AP, that is not a CFO. Hiring a CFO to do that work will make the CFO miserable, and a CFO that wants to do that is not a CFO because CFOs they're not accountants. And if you find a CFO that wants to do an accountant, look at their last jobs, and they're really a controller looking for a CFO role.
Mm.
Not a bad thing, but just understand what you're getting there. And so this to me is really figuring out hiring and what are your goals as a business. If your goals align to future, then absolutely hire a CFO once you get big enough and have it in your budget. If your goals are today, then your CFO is way too much of a hire for what you actually need.
Yeah, interesting, man. And so to really build upon this, and I've had a lot of conversations about this, and I'm gonna because you mentioned it, you have a business coach, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of good people. I mean, I've I probably should, right? I've had him on the show. I talk about him a lot. I think there's a lot of value into it. But what you're saying right now is about this fractional CFO. That's really interesting to me, right? That's really focused specifically on my business and what my goals are. So how would you compare a business coach, right? Like quote unquote, like you have versus a fractional CFO. And I think maybe the business coach goes more into like interpersonal, like where are you spending your own individual time? Where because I feel that I don't necessarily know that I want to invest in a business coach, but a lot of people do. There's a lot of value in them. But maybe for someone that's only, the business side of it, like, hey, I got my personal time. I'm happy with where I'm spending my time. I'm happy to do my business. I mean, if you're thinking about hiring one, let's say, right? I mean, how would you know to do the business coach versus this fractional CFO to see what's that next level for you?
So I think there's a third category that a lot of people don't think about, but is really, really important, and that's finding a peer group.
Yeah.
So for me, I've always said that to be a successful entrepreneur, you need three things. You need to figure out how to focus on your own mental and physical health, whatever that means for you. Number two, find a peer group, a group of people that are in a similar position to you, that you can be honest and transparent about what's going on in your business, what your needs are, what they've dealt with. Because hearing from other people that are in similar positions and being able to ask that question of people that you trust is a great way to hear how they've answered it
Hmm.
or how you do it totally different. And the third is a coach. The coach is not there to help you do things in your business. It's to help you be better for your business. So
Got
a
it.
great example is I am somebody that does not shy away from interpersonal conflict. If you and I are having a problem, I am going to walk into your office or I'm going to give you a call or we're going to hop on a Zoom. We're going to hash that out. Have absolutely no problem doing it. And I've always thought of myself as somebody that just goes straight at all conflict. Sat there with my CEO coach, and after kind of running through his initial assessments, he goes, "You know what? You are a conflict avoider." And I was like, there's no way. Like, I am not a conflict avoider. Like, I do this, I do that. And he goes, no, where you avoid conflict is when two really important people in your business are conflicting with each other. What you tell them to do is be big kids and go figure it out. And he said, that is you avoiding conflict because you know what they do? They never figure it out. And
Hmm.
so he really helped me to understand that if I'm going to help my business grow, if I'm going to be better for my team, I need to figure out how to help them do uncomfortable things and handle conflict. And that's just one of a million examples of a coach is there to make you better for your business. He or she is not there to help your business be better. A CFO is there to help your business be better.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. That's such a great point because I feel that also. As you were saying this, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the same exact way. But yeah, when people in the business are trying to deal, having has some challenges, I'm like, oh, this is the last thing I need. Come on, guys, figure it out. But it's
Oh
like
yeah.
to your point when you started, right? Most business owners, you don't want to do the bookkeeping, you don't want to do the HR, right? And that feels a lot more of like HR and really get those kind of skill sets and those people to manage that. And I'm sure that's very different than the CFO. So, Matt, listen, I've found this conversation, man, to be really helpful. I like a lot of the stuff you're talking about. So let's say someone's listening to this podcast. They come through it. They're at different stages. Maybe they're thinking they're trying to get their finances together. They can't really decide. Maybe they have a bookkeeper, right? But maybe they're thinking between a CFO and stuff like that. So if somebody's like in that point of they want to, let's say that they want to grow, they want to do better, right? They want to be more efficient, but they're kind of feeling overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. And this is really at all different levels. Where would you tell them to kind of start? Where should they start this process to help them get to helping making those decisions for them?
Finding somebody that you trust and that can help. And I would start with whatever your biggest pain point is. And obviously, if they want to reach out to decimal, we can help. There are also hundreds and thousands of people out there. Where I find that people make mistakes is if they go think that I'm going to find a big accounting firm to do this for me.
Mm.
It's very expensive and they tend to be really bad at it. I find that people that focus on the bookkeeping rather than general accounting have a tendency to be more operationally helpful. And I find that if you're really looking for it, find your industry, find people that are good at that. You've heard me mention this a couple of times. Finding people that understand your business and your industry is really, really helpful because they can truly help you understand what other businesses like yours have done that have been very successful in the past. And I find that to be a really big thing is when you're searching, too many people pick the I want to go with the local person that my cousin recommended or that my friend says was really good. Business can be very different, or it just might not be the need that you had. Make sure that you're solving for your exact pain point and not just accepting that this is the only person you want to talk to. People lazily shop for this sometimes, and that creates more problems that then become costly to unwind.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Matt, because we've had other people on here and I've been involved in what you term as a peer group. We call it a mastermind, right? Other business owners coming together, talking about it. But to the point is, yes, we do go and we say we're having these pain points and we're trying to fix it. But now as you and I are speaking, it's like, well, we're trying to fix it, but we're not necessarily the best ones to fix it, right? Like who can we go to? And we've all, gone out there. So these ideas, there's a lot of great ideas, whether someone specifically maybe not necessarily the business coach, and I'm showing up in the way I am, but really knows my business, understands exactly where we want to go into the next level. I think that's some really great advice to give them that perspective. So Matt, listen, we're going to put all the stuff out there on Decimal. This has been really helpful, and I really appreciate your time, man.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks again for having me.